Good evening and welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in Guyana over the past week or so. We didn't have a program last week because I was traveling in Europe. I was in Geneva representing the government at a very important engagement. So we have 2 weeks of issues to discuss. I want to begin, as I normally would do, by welcoming all of our viewers who are joining us on television. From Region 5, West Coast Berbice, welcome to another program of Issues in the News. To our viewers in Region 6, along the Berbice River, New Amsterdam, Kanji, and all the way along the Quarantine Coast, welcome to another program of Issues in the News. You are joining us on television. Welcome to our viewers and listeners who are joining us on Freedom Radio from Robb Street, Georgetown. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And last but not least, to the thousands of you who have joined us and who are joining us on Facebook Live across the length and breadth of Guyana, the Caribbean, North America, Europe, Asia, and further afield. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And I appeal to you, as I would normally do, to share this program. Press that share button on your phone, on your computer, on your iPad, on your whatever device you're using to view this program. Share it so that all your friends and all your followers can join in tonight's discussion so that we can have the widest possible participation. Kumar Singh, Richard Stanislaus, Robert Ramp, Joycelyn Bishop Hussain, Aziz Yusuf, Musa Ramdas, Arjun Kawahir, Mati Raghu, welcome all of you. And so many of you who are online, who are on the Facebook Live. Share the program so that you and all your friends and followers can join in tonight's discussion. Welcome all of you to another program of Issues in the News. I want to begin the program by paying tribute to 2 outstanding jurists who have passed since we last met. The Honorable Madam Justice Desiree Bernard, Cacique Crown of Honor, Order of Roraima, died on Thursday, March 28, at the age of 85. Madam Desiree Bernard has led a career that is nothing less than exemplary and stellar. As I said in a Facebook tribute, she was the first on so many things. Madam Desiree Bernard would have been one of the first women that would have entered the profession in 1963, a long time ago. And there was no turning back. She led from the front thereafter, from the perspective of women. Her Honor became the first female High Court Judge of Guyana and the first female High Court Judge in the entire Caribbean. Her Honor then was elevated to the Guyana Court of Appeal, becoming the first female judge of the Guyana Court of Appeal and becoming at the same time the first female appellate judge in the entire Caribbean. Her Honor then became Chief Justice of Guyana, appointed by Her Excellency President Janet Jagan. When she became Chief Justice, again, it was another first. She was the first female Chief Justice of Guyana and the first female Chief Justice in the entire Caribbean. Again, under the PPP government, she was appointed Chancellor of the Judiciary. Again, she became the first female Chancellor of the Judiciary of Guyana and became the first female head of the judiciary in the Caribbean. When the Caribbean Court of Justice was established, again, she was the first female judge to have been elevated to the highest court in the Caribbean. And she stayed there until her retirement. And she remained the only female judge in that court until her tenure came to an end. The career of this jurist was nothing but exceptional, and she was a trendsetter of the highest caliber. She inspired women in Guyana and across the Caribbean. Many of the female judges who are on the bench in Guyana and across the Caribbean will tell you that they drew great inspiration from Madame Desiree Bernard. Many female who entered the profession in Guyana and across the Caribbean will tell you that they drew inspiration from Madame Desiree Bernard. The fact that the female gender is now dominating the legal profession, not only in Guyana, but also throughout the Caribbean, is a testimony to the influence that Desiree Bernard exercised both in Guyana and across the Caribbean. Justice Desiree Bernard would have sat on a number of important cases during the course of her career. She would have rendered dozens of well-researched judgments, distilling and crystallizing various complicated and complex issues of law. And she had a style of writing that was highly admirable. She wrote simply, she wrote clearly, and Her Honor wrote with precision. Another distinguishing feature that made Madame Desiree Bernard a top-notch jurist was the fact that she carried herself with an aura of dignity, an aura of rectitude, and with an aura of propriety that was deserving and associated with the high offices that she held. The legal profession in Guyana and the legal profession in the Caribbean would have lost an outstanding jurist. Women would have lost an inspirational leader across Guyana, the Caribbean, and obviously beyond. I want to take this opportunity to recognize the tremendous contribution that Madame Desiree Bernard has made to law and to jurisprudence, both in Guyana and the Caribbean. I had the privilege of appearing before her in many, many cases, in the High Court, in the Court of Appeal, and at the Caribbean Court of Justice. No doubt there are other occasions that I will get the opportunity to speak more elaborately on her contribution to law and jurisprudence in the region and, of course, in Guyana. Justice Michael de la Bastide, the first president of the Caribbean Court of Justice, died on March the 30th at age 86. Justice de la Bastide hailed from Trinidad and Tobago and was an exceptional lawyer, and then rose to the bench in Trinidad and Tobago, becoming the Chief Justice of that country, and then was further elevated to be President and the first President of the Caribbean Court of Justice when the court was established. I had again the privilege and benefit of appearing before President Justice de la Bastide on several occasions at the Caribbean Court of Justice. And it was an exceptional experience to appear before a jurist and a judge of this quality. This gentleman had the clarity of thought that was incomparable. He had a command of the law and an understanding of the legal issues that is beyond compare. I have often said that it is difficult to find a replacement for Justice de la Bastide. It was a remarkable experience. It was an intellectual challenge to appear before Justice de la Bastide. He was very engaging, and he did so in a very, very respectful manner. He would engage you from the beginning to the end of your presentation, asking you dozens of questions. And that's the type of interaction at an intellectual level that you welcome from the bench. And Justice de la Bastide led from the front as president of that court. Again, I want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to this great Caribbean jurist. As you know, I was part of a delegation that represented Guyana at the 148th Interparliamentary Union Assembly, which was held in Geneva last month, under the theme Parliamentary Diplomacy, Building Bridges for Peace and Understanding. It was a great conference, and they had wonderful debates. I presented, and in my presentation, I highlighted the controversy with Venezuela, and I updated the Assembly on where we are in that matter. Many of you may have seen my presentation, which was published on Facebook. After the presentation, the Guyana delegation received widespread support. So what I plan to do is to write to the various parliaments who were present and who expressed their support to give effect to that support, to invite them to speak in their parliament and to condemn the actions of Venezuela, to call upon Venezuela to comply with international law, to call upon Venezuela to accept the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice, and to demand that Venezuela employs diplomacy and dialogue rather than threat and confrontation. Once I write those letters and disseminate them, hopefully the support which we received at that conference will then be translated into actions by the various parliamentarians in their respective parliaments around the world. Great Britain has already used their parliament as a platform to condemn Venezuela and the posture that Venezuela has adopted on this matter. They did so in December of 2023, and they were at the IPU conference, and they came to us and reiterated their support for Guyana and their condemnation of Venezuela. So we will see how that issue unfolds as time progresses. Many of you continue to ask about the election fraud cases, and as I receive information, I have been disseminating that information to you, and I want to continue to do so. You will recall that early in the month of March, the learned magistrate who has conduct of most of these cases upheld an objection raised by defense counsel that certain provisions of the Representation of the People Act, which prohibits the Guyana Elections Commission from giving or making public decisions and certain discussions held at the commission, that those provisions of the Representation of the People Act are unconstitutional in that it interfered with the rights of the defendants to access information that they may need to defend their case or cases. And those provisions, according to defense counsel, collide with the constitutional right to a fair trial. That's the argument. The magistrate ruled that the questions deserve, or the issues deserve, to be addressed by the High Court, and the learned magistrate indicated that she will refer the questions to the High Court, exercising a particular provision of the Guyana Constitution that allows for such questions to be referred to the High Court. The provision of the Constitution is Article 153(3), which essentially provides that once a constitutional issue is raised in a court lower than the High Court, then that court has the right to refer that question to the High Court for resolution. The magistrate said that she will do so. Nearly a month has elapsed, and as far as I am aware, and I made inquiries, as far as I am aware, the learned magistrate has not yet referred any such question to the High Court as promised. So the delay continues. I was critical. Well, let me not say that I was critical. I expressed the view that this objection could have been taken 3 years ago. These charges are pending 3 years now in the magistrate's court. We took a very long time, and after much public commentary, a date was fixed for trial. And only then, when a date was fixed for trial, then this objection was belatedly made. This objection could have been made at the beginning, 3 years ago, and this would have been, and the issue would have been ventilated a long time now, clearing the way for the trial to take place. At the 11th hour, defense counsel decides to make this objection, and the magistrate entertains it. And then the magistrate is yet to send the question to the High Court, as the magistrate ruled that she would. When I say anything, I am being accused of criticizing the judiciary, of criticizing the magistracy, of interference. I am just giving you the information because you are requesting it and you are entitled to an update. I believe and I reiterate that this case is unduly delayed, and every opportunity that presents itself for the case to be delayed, that opportunity is acted upon. And that is a fair commentary on the state of affairs. These are matters of national importance. So many times you write me, you ask me for an update. In your comments, you ask continuously for an update. Well, I'm giving you the update. And every time I do, I have to explain to you that government doesn't control the judiciary. Many of you criticize me and you criticize the government for not bringing these cases up to trial and for not doing this and doing that in the judicial system. And I am to report to you that we cannot interfere with the judiciary. It's an independent arm. We can be critical, but we have to be respectful. We can't ascribe any ulterior motive. We can't ascribe any sinister motive to the magistrate or to the judge. And it's not my intention to do that here. But I also have a duty to you to ensure that I update you on the progress of these matters. And I know how anxious you are, as you are entitled to be, to ensure to have these matters ventilated. So I hope that you understand. The president has spoken, the vice president has spoken, I have spoken about these delays, and yet we are blamed for it. We are criticized for it. Even at the highest level, for example, the United Nations, they are criticizing the government over the conduct of the judiciary, when we have our own problems in getting matters heard by the judiciary. We never ask for any desired outcome. We want the machinery to work in accordance with law and based upon the evidence produced or adduced. So I thought that I'll spend some time in updating you on that matter because I know that it is of great importance. Last week or the week before, the United Nations 140th session, 140th session of the Human Rights Committee on International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights dealt with Guyana and made great news. I spoke about it already. We have since submitted volumes and volumes of information, bundles and bundles of papers, providing answers in the most comprehensive way to some of the questions posed. The manner in which the questions were being asked did not provide ample opportunity to sufficiently answer the many questions in the time frame afforded or granted. So we provided a huge volume of information which we hope would find itself in the record of this committee so that these questions can be addressed by those who would like to see answers to them. So there is a particular issue that has created some frenzy in certain quarters, and it is the decision to import labor into Guyana. In this instance, from Bangladesh. First of all, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs explained, this is not the only country from which labor supply will be sought. That's the first thing I want to put on the table. And any person living in Guyana and operating within the realities of the Guyana labor market and are unaware, any persons who are operating within the Guyana labor market and are unaware that we have a dire shortage of a wide variety of skilled people and skilled labor, then something is fundamentally wrong with those persons. This is not a new problem. We have had this issue with us a long time. Guyana has suffered from a migratory drain dating back to decades. Guyana has one of the largest diaspora per capita in the world. You don't think that that will have an impact on our ability to provide or supply labor to meet the demands of a growing and expanding economy, one of the fastest growing economies in the world? How come there is this great surprise and shock at the decision to import labor, when Guyana has had one of the highest rate of migration per capita on planet Earth. In every country that you go to in the Caribbean, there are thousands of Guyanese. North America, there are hundreds of thousands of Guyanese. In Europe, the same thing. Once the economy of this country kicks in, and there is expanded and accelerated economic activities, we would face this problem. Anyone who could not have predicted this or failed to recognize this reality, then something is fundamentally wrong with you. So, the decision has been made. And this is nothing new. I don't understand the frenzy now. This is not a new phenomenon. We have been saying so from since oil was discovered in commercial quantity in 2015. We were saying so. We said so repeatedly from the time we entered government. But we have an opposition and elements in the opposition and in certain segments in our society who suffer from paranoia, xenophobia, and racism, all combined. So the outpourings of opposition and concerns that you are witnessing in the public domain and in certain segments of the press are driven by paranoia, xenophobia, and racism combined. And it's not surprising that the opposition takes this position, because the opposition politics has always been based upon racism and some degree of xenophobia and paranoia. And it dates back again to decades. So the older folks and the younger folks can go back to their history, and they will see that when in the early 60s, before most of the countries got independence, or while they were getting independence, there was an attempt to build a federation of the Caribbean territories. And Cherry Jagan, on the basis of established principles, which he made public, objected at the time, saying that it is not the time. And he gave adequate and sound reasons. He said the countries must first get their independence. They must fashion their own ethos and ideals. And then they can consider forming themselves into a regional body. But to do so, at that very early stage, in the early 60s, would assist in a continuation of control even after independence by former colonial masters and by the imperialists. And Dr. Jagan articulated, he wrote a whole book on it. Of course, Dr. Jagan was widely condemned by the PNC and by Forbes Burnham. And what was the basis of their condemnation? The racism. They accused him of being a racist, that he didn't want Afro-Caribbean nationals to come to Guyana, and that is why he was opposed. Though Jagan gave sound and rational reasons. And you know what? Just a few years after, Jagan was proven correct. Federation collapsed before it was even formalized. And Eric Williams made the famous statement, 1 from 10 is 0. And it failed for the identical reasons that Dr. Jagan had advanced a couple of years before. But when Dr. Jagan advanced his reasons here in Guyana, he was labeled a racist. And that mentality has been with the PNC since. They only see things through racial lens. And I could show you many, many examples. So let's fast forward. And that's why I'm saying their politics is always based upon ethnicity and race. About 20 years or 25 years ago, when there was a large influx of Brazilians into Guyana, they went into a mode of pandemonium. They started to publicly criticize the government, PPP government, for allowing Brazilians to infiltrate the economy, and Brazilians will take over the country. And Brazilians will be used as a voting bloc. That was the argument. 25 years after, the Brazilians have come, they have gone, and I don't see any drastic change in the country. Then, when you have the Cubans, it's the same argument. The same argument. The only group that they have never objected to, in fact, the only group that they support coming to Guyana are the Haitians. You read, you interpret that for yourself. The only group that they aided and abetted to come to Guyana from 2015 to 2020 when they were in government were the Haitians. And up to now, they speak about Haitians coming. And I got the statistics here, and it's not about, it's what happened during that period of 2015 to 2020 with the Haitians was a smuggle ring that was established. Because Winston Felix, the then minister, was asked certain questions by the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Affairs. And these are the statistics that he gave. He said that between 2017 and 2018, 3,515 Haitians arrived and only 291 left. 3,515 Haitians arrived and 291 left. And between January and April, 1,238 departed. 1,238 came and only 85 departed, bringing a total of 4,377 for the year 2018. 4,377 Haitians came for the year 2018. Now, where these Haitians are, they left. They left, they never stayed in Guyana. And that is why this was a smuggling ring. The Brazilian government had complained at the time that Guyana was a transshipment point for Haitians. But APNU, AFC never objected to this. And these are their statistics that they provided to the parliament. Over 4,000 Haitians came. They can't be found in Guyana. But they encouraged them to come. And then they smuggled out of the country. When we came into government, it was the same racket. Haitians were coming by the plane loads. Children, women. The children who were being traveled, who came on the flights, were not related to the adults. Some of them were detained in Guyana, and they got bail, and in a few hours they disappeared. But APNU, AFC don't have a problem with this. They don't have a problem with this. But they have a problem with the Bangladeshi coming. They have a problem with the Bangladeshi coming. The racism is latent and patent. And of course, they construct and fabricate their usual argument of padding the voters list, that these people will eventually vote in Guyana. One commentator says that they will break up the unions in Guyana. It is pandemonium, it is racism, xenophobia, and paranoia. I remember when we were doing the local content legislation. When we were doing the local content legislation in 2021, I think it passed the parliament, it was passed by the parliament in 2022, I think. They made many recommendations, and I want the Guyanese in the diaspora to listen to this. APNU AFC recommended that Guyanese who are living overseas must not qualify as local content. Let me repeat. They did not want Guyanese who were living overseas to qualify as local content for the local content legislation. They say the Guyanese overseas must be treated as foreigners. And you must not get jobs with the oil and gas sector. We have it in writing. That was part of their objections. We had to point out to them that Guyanese is defined by the Constitution. Whether you live in America, Canada, Trinidad, or Timbuktu, if you are a Guyanese, you're entitled to be treated equally like every other Guyanese. And that's what I'm saying. It's a combination of xenophobia, paranoia, and racism. So even their own Guyanese, they are paranoid about. Foreigners is xenophobia. Non-Afro is racism. So the Bangladeshi, they see that. The racial argument will come there, coupled with the xenophobia, coupled with the paranoia. Right now, our government is working under the chairmanship of President Ali. We are working at the level of CARICOM aggressively to implement, first of all, to expand, implement, and operationalize the CSME protocols under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. Guyana is one of the leading countries in that initiative, which is being spearheaded by the current chairman of CARICOM, His Excellency Dr. Mohabir. The CSME operationalization is taking place now under the chairmanship of President Ali. That will bring the whole Caribbean here to work. You wouldn't hear a murmur from the opposition about that, but they have problems with the Bangladeshi and the Indians from India who we may want to bring to work here and from other places. They have a problem with the Venezuelan migrants. Look, go check the public record of their vehement objections to the Venezuelan migrants. They want those people to be expelled and be treated inhumanly. You must ask yourselves why. But one set of people, they welcome. They went all the way to the United Nations to complain about the treatment of Haitians. Unless we speak about these matters, we will never be able as a country to confront them. And we must have the courage, we must have the intellectual strength, and we must have the determination to confront racism and to call out the racists among our midst. Dr. Jagan said very early in his career in the book Forbidden Freedom that a racist is an enemy to his country and his people. The People's Progressive Party from its inception has strived to achieve racial unity perhaps more than anything else. And we will continue to work to achieve that goal. But we are going to unmask the racists among our midst. And we have a right and a duty to do so. Racism is a constitutional wrong. Discrimination is a constitutional wrong. And as Attorney General, it is my duty to speak out against racism and discrimination of any type and to unmask racism as it manifests itself either in a subtle form or in a more patent manner. These are not issues that we must sweep under the carpet. The Vice President has already assured that they are not going to be disparate and differential in working terms and conditions and in the remuneration packages. They will be treated wherever they come from, wherever we migrate them from. They will be treated in similar terms with Guyanese workers based upon qualifications. You think we are crazy to bring people from a foreign land to subjugate our people? When we are the government that pushing things like local content and ensuring that we have protection for all of our people. But we live in a global village. Look how many of you looking at me now in some foreign land. Imagine if you were not given the opportunity to stay in those countries and to work in those countries, where would you have been today? Imagine if the governments of those countries and the people of those countries treated you when you entered their foreign lands the way this opposition would like to treat non-Guyanese. What would have happened to you and your family and your families? These people have a serious problem. Xenophobia, paranoia, and racism. It's a dangerous trilogy. So we are quickly approaching program time. I want to take this opportunity to compliment President Dr. Mohabir for a remarkable interview which he did with BBC reporter Stephen Sakur. It was one of the most watched interviews in recent times, so I have no doubt that almost every one of you would have seen the interview. And the President's response, very appropriate and very factual. There is a basic principle that is inherent in international law, and that is that the citizens of every country has a God-given right to enjoy the resources and the benefits from his or her country. Every citizen of every country has that legal and God-given right. Those in the United Kingdom, they enjoy that right, and it's their birthright. Those in the United States, they enjoy that right, and it is their birthright. Alaska has huge deposits of oil. Texas has huge deposits of oil. Canada has huge deposits of oil. It is the right of the citizens of those countries to benefit from those resources. Of course, they have a duty to ensure that when they exploit those resources, they do it responsibly and they do not cause untold and undue damage to the environment. And they have been doing that for the last 400, 500, 600 years. You telling me why Guyanese must not enjoy that very self-same birthright? Why Guyanese must now be told that we can't take this resource out of the earth because we are going to destroy the environment, when it is being pumped for 100 years in those countries, hundreds of years? It didn't destroy their environment. They have destroyed their forests. They have destroyed the forests in those countries, in their countries, in their efforts to exploit their resources so that they can make a better life and provide a good future for their citizens. But we must not do so. We must be concerned about the environment. Were they concerned about the environment when they were when they were destroying the forest to exploit their resources? Did they ever come to Guyana and say, you know what? We are going to affect you? No. So the president was absolutely correct in answering the gentleman the way that he did. Because you know what? Even when our production reaches at its highest possible stage, we will still be emitting at a net zero. Meaning we would still be, because of our forest, because of the rate of absorption, because of the level of our biodiversity, we will still be able to exploit our resources and maintain the international standards for the emission of green gases. They can't say the same. They can't say the same. The people of Guyana must enjoy what is lawfully and divinely theirs, and no other country will stop us from doing that. That is what is called sovereignty. That is the sovereign right of every single Guyanese. And once this government is in office, every Guyanese will benefit from the resources that God blessed this land with, and will do so equally. My operator is signaling to me that we have now approached program time. I want to thank you very much for staying with me over the past hour. I believe that we have covered a number of issues, and please enjoy the rest of your evening and enjoy the rest of the week until I see you again. Take care, and may God bless you. Thank you very much.